for those who weren't able to attend live. And as much as I'm delighted to have people here, I want to remind you there's no extra credit for attending live and no penalty for not. We have people across the country. Sometimes we have people in other countries, so it would be unfair to make everyone have to attend live. None of our sessions that are live are mandatory attendance. We record all of them. So there's some weeks where we have live sessions, and all of that's recorded, made available almost immediately, so don't worry about it if you can't make it live. Okay, let me go now and share my screen and get started. Okay, I'm going to go to my PowerPoint, as always. See if I can move SK screen out of the way there, whoever that is. Okay, Data610 course overview. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same page administratively, at least, to get started. It's such a fast-moving, fast-paced course that if you get behind, it's difficult to catch up. And so we want to make sure we get a few administrative things out of the way, make sure everybody knows how to get into the room, gets up and running. Some of you who may have attended the orientation for new students to the program, the Data610 orientation, will hear a little bit of repetition, but it'll be good for you. And again, it's important that everybody knows how to at least get into the classroom, see what the assignments are, see what the content is, etc. And so we go through this little orientation or overview course. So here's my outline. I try to stick to the agenda. Sometimes I wander off if I think of something that I think is relevant and important that I forgot to add in the agenda. But I want to try to start with introductions, outline of the seminar. Let's see. Somebody says they can't hear me. Let me see. Can everybody else hear me okay? Let me stop sharing for just a minute. It's the only way I can get back to the main screen. If you can hear me, put something down in the chat room that says you can hear me. It looks like I'm broadcasting, and so usually that's, I'll keep talking. Those of you that are here, oh, good. Good, okay. Whoever that was that can't hear me, you may have to log out and back in. Sometimes that gets hung up. It's usually the internet or something like that. Let me get back to my PowerPoint here. Okay. So, introductions, outline of the seminar, grading, miscellaneous, office hours, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing for week one to get you up and started, because as you know, week one started today. This is the beginning of the course. So it's good to get going. Introductions. You know, it's nice to have a little bio there, because we look at those of us that are faculty, we look at those, we try to tweak the program a little bit towards the interests. It's nice to know whether people have a lot of background, no background, some background. So it's kind of interesting. If you don't have to, but if you feel like you'd like to, post a little bit of your bio, what you're doing for a living, whether you're making a career change or looking for a promotion, things like that. The second bullet's important. We want to make sure you have the current email address is one in Leo, because we will correspond with you occasionally via email, and you need to have the right email address. And then if you have other interests you'd like us to talk about that are relevant to the topic, we can certainly do some of that. So this is the first course in your trail of six credit courses leading to the Master of Science in Data Analytics. This course, and I'm one of the ones who helped put this program together in the spring of, we launched it in the spring of 2014. So we're about 3.5 years in. We had 14 students to start with. We've got close to 400 now. And of course, everybody knows that there's some nice jobs out there waiting for you if you enjoy this stuff. My background, undergraduate degree in mathematics, a master's in business, and a doctorate in ops research. So I love this stuff. This is really just perfect for me. I enjoy what I do, and I just can't get enough of it. I like marrying and merging and melding the idea of analytics with decision-making, especially business-related decision-making. And so that's the focus of the course. So when we put the program together, we try to design it along that line, a focus on decision-making and analytics. There are programs out there that focus heavily on just analytics, but we have found from surveys, from our Board of Visitors, from employers, that unless you can take the analytics results and apply them to changing something in the organization, the way it's done, and improving things, you really haven't done much. So it is important that you move towards a more evidence-based decision-making approach via analytics, and you'll hear that theme mentioned repeatedly throughout the program. In this course, there are three major themes. We used to use a book when we had textbooks from Tom Davenport called Keeping Up with Your Quants. And so these are the three main areas, sort of paraphrased, a little different than what he had, but basically what he had. He said, frame the problem, solve the problem, sell the solution. So we talk about that. You know, it's very important to frame the problem. We found that a large percentage of analytical efforts that don't turn out well are because they set off with no proper framing of the problem. They just said, let's just go see what we can find. Let's just go wander around in the data. Well, that's not the best way. You need to have a focus. You need to say, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's why it's important. Here's what data I need. Here's who's going to help us with it, and so forth and so on. And you'll see some of that in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the course. Then, of course, analyzing the decision. You got to go and take a look at the data set and see if you can come up with something. Maybe you gain some insights. Maybe you find some interesting explorations and discoveries. Maybe you're able to build a predictive model and then put all that together in step 3 and sell the solution. Here's what I did. Here's why I did it. There are always limitations. There are always assumptions. There are always things that you can't account for, and that needs to be clear. On the other hand, you want to be able to move the organization forward with analytics, and I think we've achieved that in most organizations, at least an awareness of that needs to be done. Not many organizations have fully achieved a mindset or a culture that supports analytical decision making, but most are aware of the success stories out there that lead to a need to do that. I want to remind you that all of the MSDA courses, as are all UMUC courses, are competency-based. That means you're graded on what you can do, not what you know. Now, you need to know a lot before you can do something. So there's obviously a hidden thing there that says you can't really do anything unless you know a lot. But we don't want you to just be doing article critiques, case study analyses, things like that. If you keep track of every assignment you do in the MSDA program, you're going to have a very impressive portfolio to show a prospective employer. You will have done a lot of stuff, from framing decisions to solving them with various decision support packages, to various analytical packages, to presenting complete and entirely done studies. That's going to be impressive to show to a prospective employer. So we certainly grade you on what you can do. So every assignment has something for you to do, not just something to know about. Because of that, because you're using software, 2 packages in this course, and because it takes time to practice with software, to learn software, to do walkthroughs and adjust the software, there are probably fewer assignments in this course than in some courses, but we have 5. And I'll talk a little more about those in a minute. And they're spaced out so that they don't all occur every week. So there's some time in between. If you put in the effort, if you put in the requisite time, we expect 15 to 20 hours per week of your time, everyone can succeed. The only students we have who seem to not succeed are those who just can't find the time. I think everyone certainly has the intellectual capital to be successful, but you have to put in the effort. You can't just absorb it by sitting there. You have to try things. You have to experiment. You have to practice the software. You have to write things up. So the weeks between assignments usually have some activities, and those activities are designed to add information experience that if you do the activities, which are ungraded, but if you do the activities, they will help you be ready for the written graded assignments. There are opportunities to practice and learn the software. There are opportunities for discussions and interactions. So please make a vow to yourself that you're going to put in the requisite time, because that is the most important critical success factor for this and all of the MSDA courses. Now, because we have the enrollment we actually have 4 sections of Data610 this semester, each taught by the professors shown on the slide. One of those sections, Dr. Haboyan's section, starts 2 weeks later than the other 3. We found from past experiences there were enough students who either got busy in the summer or couldn't get around to enrolling in time, and then they missed the start date and said, oh no, I'm going to lose a whole semester. So we have always, for the last 2 or 3 years now, started at least one section a little bit lagged. It will have the exact same material, exact same requirements, exact same assignments. It just starts September 25th by September 11th. So these are your professors, and these would be your first points of contact for any questions about the course. I'm not teaching a section of Data 610 this semester, but I'm still keeping an eye on things, helping out, and the lectures that are recorded and presented are, of course, were done by me. So we have also faculty or teaching assistants for each section. You can check with your section and see who that is. Those are people being paid to assist in technical problems, be it software, or be it interpretation of models, etc. So you want to make full use of the resources available to you. So be sure you know who your faculty instructor is. Okay. We use software in analytics. That shouldn't surprise anybody. You can't do much without software. Now, I'm old enough to have built analytical models by hand. I say by hand with a little, actually started with an adding machine and a little handheld calculator with one memory. It took hours and hours in my doctoral program to build a very simple linear regression model on a very small data set. You can now do that with a keystroke in most of the packages you'll be using, not in 610, but beyond 610. And it's impressive to me. But even in 610, we have 2 great software packages that will get you started in the world of analytics. The first one is called Decisions First. I would be very surprised if anyone out there had ever heard of this software package. Just as an aside, I've taught courses in the MBA program at UMUC, the doctoral program. I ran the Chief Information Officer program for 7 years, and now I'm fully engaged as a full-time faculty member in the Data Analytics program. When I taught courses in anything, I always looked at how well can you frame the problem. Framing the right problem to solve is the #1 reason why analytics efforts fail. So I've looked for many years for a software package that could help with this aspect, and the best one I've ever seen is the one we use in this program called Decisions First. It's a small company, but it's a great package. It only does one thing. It frames the problem. It doesn't build analytical models, but it does a great job, as you'll see in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the course, of framing the problem. And that's very important. You have to frame the problem first. What is it you're trying to solve? Who's going to help you solve it? What are the pieces you need to solve it? What are the requirements? Where are you going to get your data? What kind of models are you going to build? What about regulations? What about company policies? Or how will those impact the frame? All of those things will become clear as you go along. Now, Decisions First is a cloud-based program, so you don't put anything on your computer. You access it from the vendor's servers. You will be provided your login and password, and you will be able to access it from cloud-based. And that's another plus for our program, because the world is moving to cloud-based everything, including analytics. So it's much nicer rather than have to put something downloaded on your machine just to go to a website, log in, and boom, you're running on their servers with their software, and they will protect the software and take care of it. The second program we use is called Watson Analytics. Maybe you have heard of that one. You've probably heard of Watson, which won the Jeopardy Challenge, which is used in hospitals all over the world, which has been a premier seller for IBM because of its enormous power to do natural language processing, to quickly look through millions and millions of documents and pull things together. It's helping diagnose cancer. It's helping with financial obligations and transactions. It's wondrous things. You go out and search on Watson, you'll see lots of stuff. Watson Analytics is basically a subset of that, which we use from, it's a program from IBM. It doesn't have the full featured Watson capability, but it does have a nice user interface to get you started in the world of analytics. It's end user analytics. It's designed for people who need to do some analytics, but not a whole lot. But it does cover the full spectrum of analytics, from examining the data, uploading the data, massaging the data, exploring the data, building at least one kind of predictive model, and then putting it all together in a dashboard to tell the story. So it covers all three pieces of what we talked about. It too is a cloud-based application, so you won't be downloading something onto your computer. You will be accessing it via the cloud, and again, you will be provided your password and access at the appropriate time. I want to provide a caution here. We are using the premier or the premium version of Watson Analytics, which means it has far more features than the trial version. So do not go to the Watson Analytics website and sign up for the free trial account. That will be a limited account. It will only be good for 30 days. It will not have all of the features. We have a license with IBM to use the premium version, and at the appropriate time, usually around week 4, you'll be provided the appropriate information for the login. You won't have to worry about it until then. Here is an outline. Everybody's always worried about, oh, what are the assignments? What do I have to do? Well, here they are, okay? The first assignment's due week 3, and it will be an assignment using decisions first, where you'll be framing a decision problem. And you'll hear more about that in your course. The second assignment, due week 5, will be your first assignment using Watson Analytics. So between weeks 3 and 5, you'll be introduced to Watson Analytics, and I'll say a little something about that in a minute. So your first assignment is a data refinement, data analysis, cleansing. You know, the basics. You start there. You pull a data set up, and you say, let me see. Have I got outliers? Have I got missing values? Have I got skewness? Have I got some things I could adjust? Do I need to create new variables? Do I need to refine the variables I have by eliminating some of these outliers, etc.? In week 7, the assignment due for week 7 is where you develop your first predictive model. Watson Analytics develops decision tree models, and those are very impressive. They're the most popular kind of predictive models. They're not the only kind. You'll learn more kinds in future courses, but it's the only kind Watson does right now. But it does do a nice job with those, and very quickly. So you'll get a predictive model that you can examine, you can interpret, you can try different sets of variables to see if you can get better models, etc., etc. In week 9, you'll take the information you've used in weeks 5 and 7 and put that together to create a dashboard. To tell the story, you'll say, here's what I did with my data, here's what I did to refine it and take a look and explore it, here's some interesting insights I found, here's a couple of predictive models I built, here's the interpretation of those. I'm putting all that together in a nice dashboard and adding a few extra features, and that's the assignment for week 9. Your last assignment is your only team assignment for the course. In small groups, usually 3, no more than 4. You will do all of those steps again with a larger data set, and you will include some Twitter data, which is a nice aspect that they added to Watson Analytics about a year ago. The ability to download and include some Twitter data. You actually do a little bit of that in your week 9 assignment also. So you'll be working in a team. That lets you do several things. It lets you deal with a slightly larger, perhaps significantly larger data set. It lets you say, okay, all the things I learned in the assignments 5, 7, and 9, I'm going to reapply and I'm going to improve on in this assignment. I'm going to work in a team environment, so I'm going to share the workload. Virtual teams are a very important aspect of learning to work together, and that's the assignment for week 12. There's also a small percentage of the grade based on your contributions to the discussion items each week. You know, the discussion items are very important. Discussion items serve a couple of purposes. First, they sort of keep the class connected. You say, oh, I see, Mary's here and Bob's here, and they're saying things and interesting things and insightful things. But they also let you provide us with sort of a version of how well your organization is adapting and adopting to the world of analytics. You know, we have something, for example, called the Analytics Maturity Quiz, which is one of our activities. So, you know, you'll be assessing your organization's analytics maturity. Are you on the right path? You know, I'm a big believer in what gets assessed gets improved, or at least it gets changed. If you don't assess something, it's easy to say, you know, we're doing a lot better than last year. But no, you have to assess it. That's why we have profit and loss. That's why we have accounting, so we can assess things, keep score. Well, you need to keep score of your analytics progress. Is your organization moving towards a more evidence-based decision approach? Or are they just muddling along, or have they even thought about it? So there's a lot of discussion items along those ilks that let you sort of put in how your organization's doing. And what that does for the group as a whole is allow people to share and see where everybody's at. You know, it's not like one organization is way ahead of others, but we want to get a consensus of where everybody is in terms of adopting and adapting to analytics. So when you post things in those discussion items, they should be interesting, they should be insightful, it can be observation. Maybe your organization has used Watson Analytics or some analytics program, and maybe they've used it successfully. Maybe they've had difficulty. Maybe they haven't been able to get past the cultural hurdles that say, we've never done it that way, we're not going to do it that way now. We rely on hunch, intuition, experience rather than analytics. Well, you can talk about that, and we'll help you suggest ways that you might help improve on that. So it's an interesting aspect. The discussion items are often overlooked, but they're an important piece to the course. Ungraded requirements. One of the first things you'll find when you get into your course, I'm sure, if you may have already found it, is you have to agree to the Academic Integrity Pledge. We have that in each course, each time. It basically is a statement that all of the work you're going to do is your own and original work. Until you post that, you won't have access to any other material in the classroom. So your faculty member will provide instructions for you to do that. It's a very short little pledge, but we have to have that. That is a university requirement. In week 4, guess what you're going to do? You're going to take a Watson Analytics Fundamentals course. Rather than us putting together some kind of walkthrough of Watson Analytics, and we do that also, we'll get you started with a Watson Analytics Fundamentals course developed by IBM and kept at a website called Cognitive Class AI. It used to be called Big Data University, which I much prefer. The name Cognitive Class AI doesn't really ring a bell with me like Big Data University does. There are a lot of free courses at that site. In fact, if you put Big Data University in your search engine, you will be redirected to the Cognitive Course AI site, so it still works fine. But there are a lot of courses there, and they're all free, courses on various things. But one course that we have you take is called Watson Analytics Fundamentals 101. It's a 3 to 4 hour course. You can do it in pieces or all at once. There are little quizzes at the end of each section. Once you complete that course, you'll be awarded a course completion certificate. You will need to post that in the appropriate assignments area before you'll get any grades for your Watson Analytics assignments. That assures us that you've at least seen and done all of the Watson Analytics fundamentals. Now, we'll be augmenting that with walkthroughs, tutorials, extra help, extra links, etc. But this will give you a good overview, a good thorough grounding in Watson Analytics, and you'll be ready to go. And so you'll be doing that as your assignment for week 4. Again, 2 to 4 hours, that's not much considering we expect you to put in anywhere from 15 to 20 hours per week on the course to do the required readings, view the required videos, practice the software, and in some weeks submit the assignments, etc. So if you put that time in and effort, I can assure you, you will be successful. The only people who seem to have problems are those who are unable to find the time commitment or put in the requisite work. Sometimes there are intervening activities that are self-assessments. I think there's one in the first week. It sort of assesses your decision-making approach. So those self-assessments are kind of insightful. They're interesting. They let you say, oh, I see, that's the kind of decision maker I am, and here's some areas where I probably need to improve. Here's some areas where I'm strong. Same thing for the analytics maturity quiz and so forth. There are required readings each week, but remember, we do not have you buy any textbooks. We're using something called Open Educational Resources, so everything is online available to you. Many of the instructors also add additional web-based articles and links in the required readings area, but only the required readings that are in the syllabus are mandatory. So there'll be updated and additional links. I mean, when I teach the course, every time I find something interesting, I immediately post it in the announcement section, and those that are interested will read it, and I think in most cases find great value in it, but they won't be required. So how does the grading work? Well, as with all UMUC graduate courses, if you do on time, on task work, that means you covered all of the tasks, you submitted it on time, there's no typos, misspelled words, grammar errors, properly referenced, that is a good solid B. A good solid B. You say, well, what if I want to get an A? Well, then you've got to show some kind of evidence of effort beyond the required minimal. Sometimes that effort is additional depth or breadth. Sometimes it's being more thorough, being better at explaining what you did, providing more insights. It's evidence of critical thinking. We know it when we see it, and so the better grades are reserved for those that do that. Now, that takes more effort, so it should usually get better grades. But it doesn't just mean more volume. It means more insightful, creative thinking, evidenced by what you post in your assignments. As always, the faculty endeavor to be as fair and objective as possible. If you have a complaint or pushback, you're free to interact with your faculty member and say, did you know that I did this part or that part, or can you take another look? Remember, a grade of B is excellent work. If you get Bs in every course in the MSDA program, guess what? You'll get a diploma in 2 years, and you'll be ready to go. So what should you do? Well, I would say read the announcements often. Every day would be ideal. We know that we're fighting for your time. We want you to put those 15 hours in, but we want to make it interesting, insightful, maybe even provocative on occasion for you. So there'll be extra links and readings posted often in the announcement section, things that will tweak you up. This is a very dynamic area. Stuff happens every day. I get up every day and find new things that I think are exciting, and I post them in my courses. I say, did you know about this article? Have you seen this technique? Have you seen this case study? Have you read this? Have you watched this exciting, riveting video? Interesting things are out there in this field. This is not a static field that stays the same. It's not stayed or stuck in where it was even a month ago. Things change every day. And of course, one of the things that will both be interesting to you and also annoy you on occasion is every Friday or every other Friday, IBM takes Watson Analytics down for a few hours and tweaks it. They'll add something new, they'll change a menu, they'll move something around, they'll add a new feature, which is great, except, of course, it requires you to adjust a little bit. So it has a positive benefit once you get used to the new tweak. And we try to watch out for those and give you a heads up. Post questions. There should be a let me have any questions discussion area for questions for the faculty member. There probably is another one for the TA, the teaching assistant. Again, technical issues should go first to the TA. Questions about the course in general to the faculty member. Especially post there questions where you think the answer would benefit everyone. We like to do it that way. If it's a question just for you, then you could email your faculty member. We try to respond to all questions within 24 hours. We try to grade all assignments within 1 week. Now, how's this going to work? Well, each week the lesson guidance will show up, usually on Sunday. The week starts Monday, so sometimes Sunday, sometimes a little bit earlier maybe. The weekly lesson guidance will show up in the course content area of your course. Now, what's in the lesson guidance? Well, let me switch over and show you a little bit of what one looks sort of like. Here is the lesson guidance for week 1. When you open up that document, you'll see a little overview just talking about here's what's in week 1. You know, if we're going to talk about decision making and try to move you towards a more evidence-based decision approach, one of the things we felt obligated to cover is what's wrong with the way I do business now? Well, a lot of things. First of all, if you're relying on hunch, intuition, and experience, you're not going to be able to handle the volume of data. You're not going to be able to handle the speed of data that's coming in now. And you're going to be subject to many of the documented and researched and well-known decision-making biases that we all have. All of us have them. You have to fight to overcome them at all times. Biases are sort of built into our psyche, and there's enough evidence out there, some of which will be presented in the lesson, to convince you of that. I remember reading a book in 1987 called Decision Traps, and it's still one of my favorite books because it proved to me that we all have these biases. So when you open up this week one lesson, part of what's in this lesson is an overview of some of these biases. Here's a little overview on decision complexity and why it's difficult. Of course, I recorded this. Then here's a bias, anchoring. I think you'll find this one interesting. When you watch this video, you'll see this is all part of the week one lesson guidance. Here's one on the decoy option. These are short little videos, but they'll illustrate some of the many biases out there. Data misinterpretation bias. And then, of course, you'll have an introduction to data analytics, featuring some of the ways in which analytics can mitigate and overcome many of these biases. Because we know that many organizations are still using hunch, intuition, experience as their primary decision approach. I think somebody's mic is on. Okay, so that's what you should see there. Then a little bit further down in this guidance, you'll see a link to the article that's required reading. You'll see a note. You'll see you'll see activity for the session.
We can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't? I'm sharing I'm sharing PowerPoint. Duh. Sorry. Let me share my screen. That was my fault. I was sharing now you should be able to see it. Let me scroll back up. You should be able to see it now. Thank you. My fault. Here's the file you'll see when you open it. Okay. Now I'm going to go through just a little bit of this tonight. Anyway, I'm going to do a little bit of this intro to data analytics tonight as part of your introduction to get you started and see what the kind of material that you'll find in these videos each week. And then at the bottom is the activity for the session. Remember I mentioned there's a decision-making checklist. That's basically an assessment of how you make decisions, and then references to the required readings. Okay? So let me stop sharing my screen. So that's the overview. Let me go back to the slides. Okay, so you should see the material each week show up. Again, a lot of recorded videos. In addition, we will have walkthroughs of the software. In fact, I should mention that this Friday, I will be doing a walkthrough of the Decisions First software. So you should have the information on that from your faculty member, the link if you want to join me live. If not, it will be recorded and available to you shortly after completion. But I like to show people the walkthrough from my perspective. Mr. Taylor, the CEO of the company, has his own walkthrough that's linked in the slides, but I like to do my walkthrough too. Whoops, what happened here? Guess I've finished that. I didn't think I'd finished already. Wait a minute. Okay. So week one, what do you do? Well, you do the required readings, of course. Watch for the information about Decisions First. You should be getting your login information, and it will be a walkthrough provided by me, as I said, Friday of this week. And that will be recorded. Don't worry about not attending live if you can't make it. There's also many, many, many Decisions First videos, tutorials, etc. In week two, you'll be learning and using the Decisions First software so that you're ready for your first assignment to be turned in by the end of week three. All assignments are due at the end of the week. So you'll have 3 full weeks between now and when that first assignment is due. Okay. Now I'm going to open up. Let me stop sharing for a second here. Boy, where's my sharing thing? Okay, so that's a quick overview. Let me see if there's any questions on that. Some of you seem to have. People could hear me. Okay, do I have the 2-screen PowerPoint? Sorry about that. That was my fault. But you'll see it when you get that first session open. I'm going to do a little bit on decision-making biases and traps next. If you want to stick around and watch that, it's I find that to be a very critical part of what's the basis for helping to change decision making. So let me go back to my screen. I'm going to share again, this time again with my PowerPoint. Sorry about that. Okay, this will be a quick overview because some of these biases and traps are also in that lesson, but I like to give my perspective each semester. Here's what I want to talk about very quickly, the need for good decisions. First of all, decision making is one skill that I think is never going to be outsourced. I don't think robots are going to be entrusted to make decisions, at least not in our lifetime. But it's rated time and time again as one of the most important management skills, good decision making. Well, when you have an overwhelming amount of data, when you have data flying in at record pace, when you have data coming from so many sources, whether it's social media, whether it's the Internet of Things, whether it's sensors, whether it's point of sale, whether it's scanners, it's just coming so fast and furious. I don't know how you possibly can digest that with just with the limitations we have on human decision making. We can only handle, as you'll see in a moment, 5 to 7 things. So we need a different approach, and I hope we make a strong case for that. Becoming a good decision maker requires coaching, just like becoming a good athlete in any skill. You can be coached under the right things to do. That doesn't always result in the best decision, but at least you took the right approach. I always give a quick example of 1992 now, I think it was. Redskins were playing Oakland in the Super Bowl, and the Redskins were 14-point favorites because they'd had such a dominant year, and I had a person actually want to bet on the game and give me 14 points. Now, that's a ridiculous bet, right? My team is 14-point favorite, and they want to give me 14 points. So I took the bet. Of course, I lost. Those of you that are football fans know that the Redskins got stomped in that game, and I lost the bet. So people say, did you make a bad decision? And I say, no. And you know why? Because if you give me that same bet again, give me a team that's a 14-point favorite and give me 14 points. In other words, I don't have to give you points. I'll take it every time. So it was a good decision. It just had a bad outcome. And you have to separate the two. So a working definition is a decision that best achieves or is anticipated to achieve your objectives. And of course, statistics can help you measure that. Okay, so we use a lot of that. Now, we've known for a long time there are three phases of decision making that Herb Simon outlined many years ago. And in fact, now I would say there's a fourth phase, and that's implementation. It's not enough to just know what the problem is or design alternative and pick solutions. You have to implement the solution, and that's why we've added that third piece: frame the problem, solve the problem, implement or sell the solution. The implementing is partly convincing. You have to convince the decision makers that what you did made sense, that what you did is the best possible choices. And people don't like that. They prefer absolute choices. People say, hey, Social Security is going to run out of money. Why can't anyone solve that? Well, we can solve that. You can agree to take less benefits. No one wants to do that. You can agree to take benefits at a later age. No one wants to do that. You can agree to pay more taxes to fund the program. No one wants to do that. Or you can die younger. No one wants to do that. Those are the possible ways to solve the problem, or a combination of those. No one wants that. We want it to be easy, painless, solve the problem without hurting anything. And that's unfortunately true of almost every problem we have. And so getting people to be relative decision makers versus absolute decision makers is a challenge. And so you have to really be convincing in your arguments. You have to explain to people that these are our choices. Yes, none of them are perfect, but here are the relative merits. And I think you can do that much better with analytics than you can with just gut feel or hunch. Further, analytics gives you an audit trail. It fosters communication. The unstructured communication, something I call the bog set, bunch of guys and gals sitting around together, is often a waste of time. I spent many, many meetings in the BOGSAT method, and it came away with nothing. You've got to be able to use a more structured approach, and you've got to be able to iterate. So other things that make decision-making hard. Well, multiple perspectives, multiple objectives, conflicting objectives, qualitative objectives. How do you measure political acceptance? Nonlinear utilities. If you have a car that'll go 60 miles, let's say you have a car that'll go 80 miles an hour and it costs $10,000, would you pay $20,000 for a car that'll go 160 miles an hour, double? No. Why not? It's double the cost, double the speed. Well, because you can't use that speed. There's a capping off. You're not going to go any faster than 80. Probably shouldn't even go 80. So you don't really want to pay for things that have a diminishing return. There's a time compression. There's uncertainty. There's information overload. We're all victims of that. So we have to come up with a better approach than using intuition, hunch, gut feel. And of course, there's these biases. Now, you're going to see some of these biases when you go through some of those little videos, but we've known about these for some time. G.A. Miller in 1956 published a landmark seminal article, The Magic Number 7 plus or minus 2. When I taught live and in the classroom, I used to illustrate this by seeing how many people could sing the 12 Days of Christmas. Everybody was fine up through 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, partridge, and pear tree. You got that. After that, there was a serious drop-off. We knew there were maids milking, lords leaping, drummers drumming, but exactly how many and where those came in seemed to be vague. And that's because we sort of reached that limit of 7 plus or minus 2. Why do you think there are 7 dwarfs and not 9? See, there were originally 9, but Lefty and Shorty were omitted when Disney read this article. Or at least I've heard. Anyway, there are a lot of other articles here that you could find and read about. Decision traps, my favorite. Magic Number 7, plus or minus 2. These are the traps out of decision traps. And again, you're going to have a video that will explain a little bit more about these to you. But you can see these first 3 have to do with poor framing. And those are the most critical 3. Plunging in without really knowing what you're doing. Being blind to other people's frames. Not controlling the frame so it doesn't grow out of hand. People keep adding on. It's known as scope creep in other terms. These are all problems. All well documented in this book, by the way, which is still available for inexpensively. Some other biases, and I'm not going to go through all of these. These are in, again, a seminal article published in 1986 with proof. Every one of these has been proven over and over again. Selective perception biases. We only look at the information that supports what we want to believe. You should watch all sources of information. Some people only watch Fox. Some people only watch CNN. Some people only watch MSNBC. They're getting only one side of the picture. So these are details on those biases, but I'm not going to spend time on that tonight. Dan Ariely is a current researcher. He's at Duke University right now. He wrote a book, a great book, called Predictably Irrational. He had proven, I think, with enough experiments and in vignettes that people are irrational, but in a predictable way, which means that's good. You can overcome that if it's predictable. Irrationality can be recognized and overcome, but you have to work at it. I will give you one example of one of the biases, anchoring. And this is a true story. I borrowed this from Mr. Ariely and modified it for my own MBA class about 3 years ago. I gave people a piece of paper. Half the class got a piece of paper that had this on it. Is the population of Turkey greater or less than 35 million people? And they were to pick one. Of course, it didn't allow them to look it up on the internet or anything. And then the second question they were to answer is, what is your estimate of the population of Turkey? Simple, right? And most people don't know too much about Turkey, so that they took a guess, and they said the average answer was 33 million. Okay? The other half of the same class, remember we're sitting in the same classroom, the other half of the class got this piece of paper. Is the population of Turkey greater or less than 100 million people? Pick one. And what is your estimate of the population of Turkey? Average answer, 106 million. Now think about that. It's the exact same question, but I was able to anchor their thinking by giving them that first question. So when I asked, is the population greater or less than 35 million, the average answer was 33 million. When I asked the question, is it greater or less than 100 million, the average answer was 106 million. That's one example of how easy it is. These were MBA students. These were not people off the street that wouldn't be expected to think clearly. These were MBA students who should have given it a lot of thought, but they were convinced that since the first question had this number in it, it must be something close to that number. That's called anchoring. It's one of the well-known biases. Now, I'm not going to go through all the other biases. They're contained in your class lesson. in a little more detail, but I wanted to give you one illustration of how prevalent biases are. And of course, you're thinking, well, I would never fall for such a thing. I would never have any of these biases. I can assure you that you're wrong. I'm wrong. I'm victim of the biases. You have to work hard to overcome them. You will see them show up every day. So I'm going to stop there, and you can go when you get that lesson one available to you, which it should be by now. Watch the videos that I've posted in there, and you'll hear a little more elaboration. So with that, I'm going to stop and answer questions. Somebody says, can you share the slides? All of the slides are in the classroom for all of the presentations. So the answer is yes. Sorry about couldn't see the screen. That was a screw up on my part because I'm very experienced using WebEx, and I should have known better, but I didn't. Well, I'm delighted that we have so many people interested in the MSDA program and are jumping in there and getting started. I can assure you there are many jobs out there waiting for you, and I can assure you that by the time you complete the MSDA at UMUC, you will be well equipped to go out and do that. So what we will be having shortly, again, will be a walkthrough of Decisions First, and then in a couple of weeks, we'll have a walkthrough of Watson Analytics. But before that, you will actually have taken the Watson Analytics Fundamentals 101 course and have some good awareness of all the features. It's a very, very interesting and powerful program. Its strongest points are source data refinement and data exploration and dashboards, but it does do some predictive modeling. Are there other questions about administratively how this works? Again, will Decisions First be available during the entire program 2 years? That's a very good question. The answer is all software that we use in the MSDA program is available to you as long as you are in the program. So the answer is yes. In fact, I'm teaching 2 sections of the practicum course this semester, so I have students using Decisions First, they're using R, they're using Python, they're using SAS, they're using Tableau, they're using any variety they choose for whatever project they happen to pick. So all software is available to you throughout the MSDA program. Yes, good question. Thanks. I should have made that clear. I always forget to mention that, but that's a very good question. And again, you do not have to purchase any software, nor do you have to purchase any books. Okay, well, I think we're going to have a very interesting semester. I'm delighted, as always, to welcome the new crowd. Your faculty will take it from here, but I'll be assisting them in any way I can. If you find any outdated, broken links, be sure and let us know. We'll find a suitable substitute. Things do change on occasion. As I said, IBM likes to update and tweak the Watson Analytics about every 2 weeks. So they added the Twitter data aspect about a year ago, made it pretty interesting. So it's kind of neat. All right, well, thank you so much for attending. As I said, this is being recorded, so the link will be available to you if you choose to review or look at it. And certainly it'll be available for those who are unable to attend live. Have a good evening, and let's enjoy the course.